Russia did this as a middle finger to NATO, as a middle finger to Britain, because they don't like any kind of rhetoric that NATO wants this country to join, and this is just them provoking us, and we have had a totally pathetic response, totally pathetic. But it's a shame because the Ukrainians are the ones that are fighting the Russian army for us. You know, Putin has said that he wants to pursue his ambitions west, beyond Ukraine, into the Baltics, into Poland, into Berlin.
Okay.
And the Ukrainians are fighting it for us, and we're doing nothing for it.
Tell us about the strikes that have happened in the last 24 hours. Just give us the detail you have, how damaging they were, what they targeted. Tell us about that.
Well, I arrived straight away from the Donbass, which I've been spending the last few days in, and I crossed the Dnipro River, which runs right through Kyiv, and watched 3 cruise missiles hit residential areas and kill 18 civilians. And this was something that Russia wanted to do on Ukrainian Independence Day, but they sort of held off because Steve Witkoff was here, member of Trump's entourage. And it was sort of to be expected. And I was the first reporter there in the aftermath of that attack. And I saw people being pulled out of their apartment buildings on stretchers, people who were dead put into ambulances. And it was horrific. And it shows, if you really want to know what Putin wants and you want to know what his actual intentions are, instead of listening to what he talks about when he goes to Alaska or when he releases press releases, about peace, this is actually what he's doing, which is killing civilians every single day in a city like this. This is a city that I live in, and I'm used to this. But this is Russia's intentions, and it was dramatic. And, you know, it's been a few weeks since Russia has done this because they wanted the Alaska trip. It was a great PR stunt for them. But they have really started upping the antics with attacking Ukraine recently. I just come back from the front lines. I was 10 kilometers from the Russians in the last 48 hours, and they've been shutting off all the roads. They've been hitting all the ambulances and cars driving into Konstantinivka, all of the areas of the Donbass that are full of civilians, with FPVs, with drones. And it's getting worse every single day here in Ukraine. It's a shocking situation.
How significant is it that these attacks have targeted Kyiv, that they've targeted EU buildings, that they've targeted a British Council building, and what are people saying? What have the public been reacting? People you've been speaking to?
Well, I was the first journalist to break this story about the British Council building because I was there before the police even found out where the site was. I was driving literally just across the Dnipro River when I saw the missiles hit and all of the smoke and saw this happen. It wasn't really surprising for me, but it's extremely shocking geopolitically. Russia are now trying to provoke NATO, provoke Britain, and provoke America, and also put a middle finger up at all of us by targeting basically government buildings that we have in Europe, right? This was a British building filled with British employees, government employees that our taxpayers pay for, with ballistic missiles. They did the same thing with the EU building, and they did the same thing with NATO buildings. And they're going to continue doing this because we're showing a lot of weakness here, and it's extremely concerning. But also, this happened at exactly the same week that Russia hit a American manufacturing warehouse in Lviv. The exact same week that that Russia launched drones 100 kilometers inside NATO airspace into Poland, which crashed into Poland. And this is happening because Russia are trying to test us. They're trying to test NATO's patience. And they're also trying to show that NATO is weak in their response. And look at the response to what happened today. A government building filled with full-time government British staff was hit and destroyed today. I saw the glass fall from that building, and Keir Starmer tweeted about it and said, "It's a shame. It's a pity."
He's also accused,
too little, too late.
He's also accused President Putin of trying to sabotage hopes of peace as well. A Foreign Office spokesman said the UK condemns in the strongest terms these outrageous attacks on the Ukrainians and the damage done to the British Council and EU delegation. Russia's increasing attacks on Ukrainian civilians and cities, including Kyiv, are further sabotaging international peace efforts. What have the Ukrainians and Zelensky said about this, just briefly, Caolan?
Well, the Ukrainians have been pretty disappointed because the Ukrainians were very, very hopeful that this might be a waking point for America and for Britain to finally intervene and to finally actually do what needs to be done to help Ukraine in the way that it really needs to. And the response has just been a tweet from the Prime Minister. So people are pretty disappointed here. I mean, I was on national television here on the biggest TV station about 3 hours ago. And I said, unfortunately, this isn't going to increase aid to Ukraine. This isn't going to actually increase support for Ukraine from the allies. And they agreed with me. So Ukrainians are pretty bleak about all of this. And, you know, Russia did this as a middle finger to NATO, as a middle finger to Britain, because they don't like any kind of rhetoric that NATO wants this country to join. And this is just them provoking us. And we have had a totally pathetic response, totally pathetic. But it's a shame because the Ukrainians are the ones that are fighting the Russian army for us. You know, Putin has said that he wants to pursue his ambitions west, beyond Ukraine, into the Baltics, into Poland, into Berlin.
Okay.
And the Ukrainians are fighting it for us, and we're doing nothing for it.
Caolan, thank you. That's Caolan Robertson, a reporter in Kyiv. Thanks for joining us this evening.
So the site of the British Council office in Kyiv, hit by Russian missiles, has brought into sharp focus again the lack of real progress in negotiations to end the war in Ukraine. 21 people were killed in the attack on the Ukrainian capital. It's Moscow's first major assault since President Trump's meeting with Vladimir Putin in Alaska. It prompted the Foreign Secretary David Lammy to summon the Russian ambassador to protest. We can speak now to Caolan McGivern, who's the Director of Ukraine at the British Council and joins us from Kyiv. Caolan, good morning.
Good morning, Callum. How are you doing?
Yes, I'm all right, thank you. More importantly, how are you? And I suppose, how is it in Kyiv after this attack? As we say, it's really quite a major one. After all that optimism of a couple of weekends ago, here we are witnessing the brutality of Vladimir Putin's Russia.
Thanks, Callum. Look, first of all, I want to extend our condolences to the families of the 21 people who died in the tragic attack the night before last. And, you know, it really is another instance of the terror inflicted on Kyiv by the Russian missile attacks. So our condolences from all at the British Council. Our buildings can be repaired, but you know, loss of life is just intolerable. I've just returned from the blast site this morning, visiting the Ukrainian police force and our security detail who've been posted there overnight to secure the premises for us. And it really is quite devastating for us. The buildings are out of use and will be for some time now. But Callum, I just want to give you and the listeners the reassurance that our work will continue. It'll continue unabated. And in fact, we've redoubled our resolve to do even more than we can to strengthen relationships between Ukraine and the UK, using people-to-people connections in education and culture.
Can you help us understand why that's important, what that is adding?
Well, people-to-people relationships through things like education and culture are the fundamental building blocks of peace and prosperity and greater security, because they strengthen the ties at the most atomic level between our countries. You know that the experience that you and your listeners would have had when they've lived somewhere, when they've worked with someone from another country, when they get to know that culture, when they've experienced that collaboration, you know, you never forget that. And that deepens your psychological connection with that place. And for us, our job is to try and strengthen those connections at a people-to-people level between Ukraine and the UK. And we're doing it day and daily through educational programs, through arts collaborations, through the teaching of English, the learning of the English language, trying to supercharge the amount of English that's spoken in Ukraine. And there really is an unquenchable appetite for that. And the UK has enjoyed a remarkably positive standing in Ukraine as a result of the interventions that we've made, not just in security and defence, but in education and culture and across the full spectrum. So it's something for us to be proud of.
In terms of, I suppose, the feeling of peace or otherwise, the distance to go before we get to peace, how does that feel to you, to those that you are working with, Colin, to those who you are around? Does peace feel further away than ever?
Well, we're working on a day and daily basis to make sure that Ukrainians have the skills and capabilities necessary to take positive steps on their Euro-Atlantic pathway, if you like, to ensure that when peace comes, Ukraine is fully capable of engaging on the international stage with English language, with the skills that they need to compete inside the knowledge economy, to have schools that are producing well-educated, brilliant young people for the next generation. So it's about building the peace now in order to ensure that Ukraine can be strong in the future.
Yeah. Colin, thank you very much for speaking to us this morning. It's good to have you on, and all the best as, I suppose, the kind of recovery operation continues there. But thank you for your time.
Thanks, Callum. Thanks for your interest.
No, not at all. That's Caolan McGivern, who's the Director of Ukraine at the British Council, talking about the importance of the work that they are doing there, and that has been kind of the victim, really, in the last 24, 48 hours or so